Let me start with something nobody in a dealership will ever tell you. Your car battery, the one sitting under that hood right now, is not dying because it's worn out. It's dying because it's poisoned, and the poison is something called lead sulfate. It builds up on the battery plates every single time you use the battery, and over months and years it calcifies into a hard, crystalline crust that chokes the life out of your cells until one cold morning. Nothing happens when you turn the key. That's not wear and tear. That's not normal aging. That's a known, solvable chemical problem. And the solution has been sitting in your pantry or on the shelf of every hardware store in the country for over a century. The powder is called Epsom salt, magnesium sulfate. You buy it for sore muscles, for garden fertilizer, for bath soaks. A 1-pound bag costs about $1 at any dollar store. And when you know how to use it on a lead-acid battery, it can dissolve that sulfate buildup, restore lost voltage, and give a battery you were about to throw away a genuine second life. I know how that sounds. I know the skeptics are already typing. But stay with me, because the chemistry is real, the history is documented, and the fact that this knowledge got buried is the most infuriating part of the whole story. The lead-acid battery has existed since 1859. In over 160 years, the basic design has barely changed. You've got lead plates submerged in a sulfuric acid electrolyte solution, and when the battery discharges, lead sulfate crystals form on those plates. When you charge it back up, most of those crystals dissolve. That's the cycle. The problem is most. Not all of those crystals dissolve. Every partial charge, every time you leave lights on, every cold night where the battery sat half depleted, those are moments where some crystals harden and calcify. Over time, the buildup gets so thick it insulates the plates from the electrolyte. The battery loses capacity, loses cold cranking amps, loses the ability to hold a charge. You get stranded, you buy a new one, and the cycle begins again. The average American replaces their car battery every 3 to 5 years. The global lead-acid battery market is worth more than $40 billion annually. Replacement parts, installation fees, recycling charges. It's a perfect machine for extracting money from people who simply don't know what's happening inside that black box under their hood. Know the enemy, sulfation. The technical term is sulfation, the process by which lead sulfate crystals harden on battery plates. Industry engineers have known since the mid-20th century that sulfation is the primary cause of premature battery death. They've also known it can be reversed. That information has never made it into the owner's manual. Around the year 2000, the major automotive industry groups quietly shelved a wave of independent research that was showing some embarrassing results. Simple desulfation methods, including chemical additives, were extending battery life by years. Not months, years. The research didn't disappear because it was wrong. It disappeared because it was right. What nobody wanted you to know is that Epsom salt, magnesium sulfate, when introduced to a battery's electrolyte at the right concentration, acts as a mild desulfating agent. The magnesium ions help break down the calcified lead sulfate crystals, returning sulfate back into the electrolyte where it belongs. The plates can breathe again. Voltage recovers. The battery that was headed for the recycling pile comes back to life. The cheapest battery you'll ever buy is the one you don't have to. Let's get into the actual science for a minute, because this matters. I'm not asking you to take this on faith, and I'm asking you to understand why it works so you can trust it. A healthy lead-acid battery has sulfuric acid as its electrolyte, roughly 30 to 40% sulfuric acid in distilled water. The specific gravity of that solution, which you measure with a hydrometer, tells you the state of charge. A fully charged battery reads around 1.265. A dead one reads around 1.120 or lower. When sulfation happens, sulfate ions leave the electrolyte and bind to the lead plates. So your electrolyte becomes weaker, less sulfuric acid, more water, and your plates become less conductive, both problems at once. When you add a small, carefully measured amount of Epsom salt dissolved in distilled water, the magnesium sulfate introduces additional sulfate ions into the electrolyte. This shifts the chemical equilibrium. The already dissolved sulfate in solution is now less energetically favorable on the plates, and some of the crystallized lead sulfate begins to dissolve back in. Combine this with slow, low-current charging, which generates heat and vibration at the plate level, and you're giving that battery the best possible chance of reversing the damage. This isn't folk magic. It's Le Chatelier's principle from your high school chemistry class. Shift the equilibrium, and the reaction moves in the direction you want. The industry knows this. They've always known this. Before we get into the method, 2 things you need to hear clearly. First, this works best on batteries that are weak but not completely dead, ones that can still hold some charge and haven't been fully discharged to 0 for months. The more sulfation has progressed, the harder the reversal. Second, always work in a ventilated area. Batteries off-gas hydrogen. No sparks, no smoking, no open flames nearby. Safety first, always. Here's what you need. Your supply list: Epsom salt, magnesium sulfate, distilled water, not tap, minerals in tap water damage cells, a turkey baster or battery filler, a hydrometer, optional but recommended, a smart charger or trickle charger set to 2 amps, safety glasses and rubber gloves, a voltmeter, total cost if you're starting from nothing, under $15. If you already have a charger, probably under 2. 1. Remove the battery from the vehicle if possible and let it sit at room temperature. Cold batteries respond poorly. Give it an hour if it's been outside in winter. 2. Using your voltmeter, check the resting voltage. Anything above 10 volts is workable. Below 10 volts and the battery may have a dead cell. You can still try, but manage expectations. 3. Remove the cell caps on top of the battery. Not all batteries have removable caps. Maintenance-free AGM batteries are sealed, and this method does not apply to them. You need a traditional flooded lead-acid battery with accessible cells. 4. Check the electrolyte level in each cell. The plates should be fully submerged. If any are exposed, top them up with distilled water only. Never tap water, never acid, until the plates are just covered. 5. Mix your Epsom salt solution. Dissolve approximately 7 to 8 tablespoons of Epsom salt in 1 quart of warm distilled water. Stir until completely clear. You want full dissolution, no granules remaining. 6. Using the turkey baster, slowly add the solution to each cell until the electrolyte level rises to just below the fill tube. Don't overfill. The battery needs room for the electrolyte to expand during charging. 7. Replace the caps loosely. Don't seal them tight yet. You need to allow off-gassing during the charge cycle. 8. Connect your trickle charger set to its lowest setting, ideally 2 amps or less. Slow charging is the key. A fast charge will heat the battery too quickly and can damage cells. You're looking at 24 to 36 hours of slow, steady charging. 9. After charging, let the battery rest for 2 hours, then check the resting voltage. A recovered battery should read 12.4 volts or higher. Check the specific gravity with the hydrometer if you have one. Look for readings at or above 1.250 in each cell. 10. Reinstall, test under load, and monitor over the next few weeks. Many people see dramatic improvements immediately. Some batteries require 2 or 3 treatment cycles for maximum recovery. Let's be straight with each other, because I'm not in the business of selling you fantasies. This treatment is not a miracle cure for every dead battery on Earth. If a battery has a shorted cell, a physical internal failure, no amount of Epsom salt fixes that. If the plates have buckled, cracked, or corroded beyond a certain point, the chemistry can't put them back together. Those batteries are done. But here's what I've seen and what thousands of people in the off-grid and prepper community have documented. Batteries that read a pitiful 11.2 volts climbing back to 12.6. Batteries that couldn't start a lawnmower spinning up a car engine in the cold. Batteries that were 3 years into a supposed 5-year lifespan, still going strong at year 9 and 10 after a treatment or 2. The sweet spot is a battery that's 2 to 4 years old, has been kept charged but is starting to show weakness, longer cranking times, sluggishness in cold weather, needing a jump more than once. Those are the batteries where this method pays off the most dramatically. You're catching the sulfation before it becomes truly irreversible. Pro tip for off-gridders. If you run a solar setup with deep cycle lead-acid batteries, this method is even more critical and even more effective. Deep cycle batteries are more sensitive to sulfation from partial state of charge conditions, which is exactly what most solar setups create. A quarterly Epsom salt treatment and a proper equalization charge can double or triple the life of your battery bank. We're talking about potentially saving thousands of dollars on replacements. I want to zoom out for a second because the Epsom salt trick is just one example of something much bigger. We live in a system that profits from your dependence. Not because there's some shadowy group in a conference room deciding to make you helpless, though that happens too, but because helplessness is simply good for business. When you don't know how to maintain your tools, your vehicles, your shelter, you become a customer. You pay somebody else to fix what you could have fixed yourself. You throw away what could have been saved. You replace what could have been repaired. The automotive industry generated nearly $90 billion in parts and service revenue in the United States last year. The battery replacement market alone accounts for billions of that. Every battery that gets a second life through $1's worth of Epsom salt is a battery they didn't sell. Every person who learns to maintain their own equipment is a customer they lose. Knowledge is the original off-grid currency. Not gold, not silver, not freeze-dried food. Knowledge. The ability to look at a dying battery and know exactly what's happening inside it and know exactly what to do about it is worth more than any product any company can sell you. It's the kind of knowledge that doesn't expire, doesn't run out, and can't be taken from you. That's why we cover this stuff. That's why the channel exists. Not to sell you gear, not to entertain you with apocalypse prep content, but to give you the kind of practical, field-tested knowledge that turns you from a consumer into someone who can actually take care of themselves and the people around them. Every battery you save is a middle finger to the system that wanted you helpless. Once you've recovered a battery, the goal is to keep sulfation from building back up. That means a few simple habits that cost you nothing but a little attention. Keep your battery topped off. Partial discharge is sulfation's best friend. If you have a vehicle that sits for weeks at a time, a second car, a boat, a backup generator, put a solar trickle charger on it. A $10 panel on eBay can maintain a battery indefinitely. Don't let it sit discharged in a cold garage for 3 months and then wonder why it won't start in spring. Check your electrolyte levels twice a year. Summer heat evaporates the water in the electrolyte and exposes the plates. Exposed plates sulfate immediately and permanently. 2 minutes with a bottle of distilled water can prevent that. Keep your terminals clean. Corrosion on the terminals increases resistance, which means your battery works harder to deliver the same power, which means it discharges faster, which means more sulfation. A tablespoon of baking soda dissolved in water, applied with an old toothbrush, cleans terminal corrosion in about 30 seconds. And once a year, or any time you notice the battery starting to feel weak, run the Epsom salt treatment. Make it part of your seasonal maintenance routine the same way you change oil or check tire pressure. Your battery will reward you with years of extra life. A $1 bag of Epsom salt, distilled water, a slow charger. That's the entire investment to potentially double the life of a battery that costs you $60 to $200 to replace. The knowledge has existed for over a century. It was documented by independent researchers. It was studied by engineers who already knew the answer before they wrote the study. And it got buried because a dollar solution is terrible for a billion-dollar industry. Now you know it too. Use it, share it, and stop paying for problems you can fix yourself. If this helped you, drop it in the comments. Tell me how old the battery was, what voltage you recovered, how many cycles it took. That's the real data, not what the industry publishes, not what the parts store tells you, what the community actually finds in the field. That's what we're building here. Stay prepared, stay self-reliant, and don't let them sell you what you can fix yourself.